Hi teacher, this is my presentation from the blog research. I choose the African American vernacular English as a topic, as the principal topic of my investigation, and this is my personal research. First of all, I would like to clarify that this presentation is more like a summary of what I did in the blog. This is the most important parts of the blog, so I will I will upload the link to the to this video and to the blog at the same time. So let's start. What we have here is the objective. The meaning of this investigation is to illustrate how African American culture has created a new form of communication based on the English language. So basically, I wanted to classify in um, these different topics, these different parts of what African American vernacular English is. I choose history as first, later inclusion and appropriation of this new dialect that they created. Later we have the linguistical changes in English, the most important part, and how um, mm, later the famous celebrities and references to the African American community. There we have. It is important, very important to show some famous celebrities because in these days these celebrities use this dialect very often in their music, in their works. So, and I would like to represent some, sorry, to talk about some very important figures to the Black history and how they fought for their rights. So that's the famous celebrities references part. And finally, we have a conclusion, a very personal conclusion that I wanted to give. I have another conclusion in the blog, but this conclusion is more personal. It's more improvised, improvised. Well, I don't know how to say it. Well, it is more personal because I wanted to show how this dialect is is a representation of language evolving in people, like how humanity, how humans adapt the language for them. Not the language, not take the people, but well, the people take the language and they change it. Well, that's a part of the conclusion. So let's start. History. What we have here in history. Um, I took some statement from Donald Winford. He's a writer and the author from the Oxford Handbook of African American Language. Um, he is looking to the origins of this dialect, but the statement that I took for this research is very general because there are a lot of theories and origins about how African American vernacular English appeared in the United States. But this is the like with Donald Winford investigation is the most close to a general description to like the connection of all these theories of how this dialect appeared. Well, that's possible. Let's pass to the next slide. So now we have appropriation of the English as a main language, and what we have here is have a lot to be with the history because it is more part of slaves um, how slaves create this dialect, how they have this necessity of communication, and they have no idea how English worked, so they started to they tried to learn it in the most simpler way, but with the pass of the years they found out a new ways of yeah, some new ways of express their ideas. That's what I'm trying to say. They found this new language that they have no idea, but with the pass of the years they learned it and they managed to create new forms of communicate and new forms of, of express their culture in this language. That's 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 what African American vernacular English is. So there we have here another little part, a little summary of the history of how slaves appropriate have to appropriate this language in their culture, in their lives, and later with the pass of the years, they have been more normal for them. So, like nowadays, there are a lot of new expressions that they created in their way of communication, this new dialect. So we have some examples here, like lit, woke, bay, ratchet, cis, slay, hella, basic, and well, a lot of them. So it is more like their culture expressed in this new language. They had this necessity to recreate all that they yeah all that they had in their life, in the past life in Africa, and they now have to implement their knowledge in this new country, in this new world. So that's what is the appropriation of English for them. So let's pass it to the next slide. So what we have here is the linguistic changes. Well, there's a lot of changes in the linguistical aspects of the English. But the first, like the most important of them, of these changes, is called the habitual B. The habitual B, it's like a new tense. It's not a tense. It's not recognized by the Oxford Academy or some official academies, but they express it. They use it every day. Like she, an example, she is singing. They don't say that. They say she be singing, and it implements a lot of times. Like if you say she be singing, it means she is singing right now. She will sing in a moment, or she was singing a little time ago. There's a lot of implications there with this dialect, with this habitual B, and it's the most important because they use it a lot, the habitual B. Yeah, and also there's another one that they ain't, it's a grammatical variation. They didn't say he isn't coming, as you can see in the image. They say he ain't coming, and you can see like there's a musical way of a new musical representation of the language on this language. He ain't coming sounds more um, musical than he isn't coming. It's more like their culture. It is represent this thing is representing their culture. Well, there are a lot of linguistical changes, but most of them are simplifications of the English. They can omit some articles. They can simply omit some letters and change other letters. It is this dialect is more of a simplification and yeah, an easier way to speak English, an easier way to say what you think without implying past tense, future tenses. No, well, they can speak that. They use this regular English, but there's no problem with about using this dialect for them. Some people in the United States think that this dialect is not correct, but yeah, it is completely correct because they are using it in a way to express themselves, and you can still understand what they're saying. There's no change of, there's no change in the language at all. Like they are speaking like Spanish. No, they are speaking English. They are speaking a new way of English that implies their culture, and it evolved through the history. So yeah, it is completely correct to speak with African American vernacular English. Well, those are the most important examples: the ain't and the habitual be. So let's pass to the next slide. So what we have here are some famous celebrities and references to the African American community. Uh, I would like to start with the current references. So what we have here is Kanye West, one of the most important um, artists at the moment. Then we have Tyler the Creator, another artist, and finally Donald Glover, or more known as Childish Gambino. Um, he's a singer and an actor. He's a pretty good artist. He had a big talent in all, the well. He's a very good actor and singer, and he also likes to write. And well, he's a very talented person. But what I would like to clarify is that without the effort of some African American references of the past, they have they couldn't have what they have today, because some years ago the United States were a very, very oppressive state with the American people, with the African American people. So let's pass to the next slide. So what we have here are some very important references to this community, to the African, not only the African American community, but the African community in general. But let's start with the African American communities. Uh, so first of all, we have here Rosa Parks. She was a common woman, a common black woman. She was going home before work, after work, sorry, and she took the bus to go home, as every one of us. But in that bus, it was a white people bus. So a white guy took also took the bus and asked her for the seat because he wanted to sit there, but she was there. And his argument was that he was white, and because he was white, he deserved the right of that seat. And she didn't like that. She didn't go out of the bus, and the police was called, and a lot of people saw this. A lot of Black American, a lot of African American persons saw this, and they started a kind of revolution. This day, uh, the revolution from the African American rights started because it wasn't December 11. Oh, let me check. Yeah, it was on December 1st, 1st of December of 1955. She created this new, uh, she started this revolution just for her acts, for her way of thinking that she deserved that seat because she was tired and she wanted to go home. So later, years later, something happened later than this revolution started. Like it started this year 1955, and in the 1970s Martin Luther King was one of the most important figures of this fight. He was a minister, a Mormon minister, and he used his power of, of communication with the people, with his people, to spread the word of how they deserve rights as every person in the world and as every person in the United States. But later we have a very important figure, but to the African community in general, the black people in general, and we have Nelson Mandela. He was the first he was a prime minister, and later he was elected as a president of South Africa. Most of his campaign, most of his time in the power, he he fought to the rights of black people in Africa, because in Africa was completely um, it was a colonial. It was very colonial, like France, Portugal, Spain. A lot of countries had power over Africa. But with this man, Nelson Mandela, he wanted black people, African people, to take what they deserve, the power of their own countries. And it was a lot of political problems with him because he inspired people to take what they deserved, their rights, their visions, their power. And yeah, he was like another spark to show the entire world, what black people really deserve. They really deserve the rights that we all have today. So yes, that's it. This is like some of the most important references uh, in the history, and yeah, that's it. We have a conclusion right here, and as a conclusion, I would like to say that without the effort of lot of people, without the effort of the slaves to find freedom, to learn new languages, without this necessity of survivance, nothing of this will be happening. Like they wouldn't, maybe today, slavery could still exist, like in a normal, very normalized way. So African American Vernacular English, it's a representation of that effort. They took this language, this new language, English, and made it work for them. They didn't let white people to tell them what they had to do. No, they used this language to express themselves, to express their culture, and they changed it. They they created this dialect, and today most of the teenagers on this generation on the United States, on in every part of the world, they love this new way to express themselves because it's very simple, it's very fresh, it's new, it's completely it's completely new because they invented like some years ago, and this in this history, this evolution of this dialect, it's completely impression, like it's awesome because something started with African languages. It started with this need of freedom. That's what it started. It started with this necessity of freedom, and this evolved in what is called today Ebonics or African American Vernacular English. And that's it. That's the conclusion. Thank you so much. Thanks for the attention, and that's all. Thank you.